Only be able to speak in Shakespearean English or Gen Z slang.
Doth thou even hoist? I'm going Shakespeare for the class. Definitely. None of this brain rot.
Feel like they're both equally hard to decipher, right? Unless you're Gen Z and you know the terms, you don't know what they're saying. But then if you speak Shakespearean, they also don't know what you're saying. But one, like you said, is classy and one is not classy.
We're so old guys talking about Gen Z slang as brain rot. Like what? The slang that when we were growing up was that brain rot?
Nah, it's awesome. We were cool. I say we because I am like 10 years older, but we were cool. We used to say rad.
Wicked.
Everything was sick and mean. I still say that stuff. So,
Yeah.
I'm still living the early 2000s, listening to my Simple Plan and Green Day. Not actually, but, had a good time with those emo bands.
My kids keep coming up with stuff they hear at school, and it's like, what are you talking about? I mean, I don't want to start saying them. It's gonna ruin the podcast if I start saying these things. Let's just move on.
I looked into the one that's like 6'7". It's like
Nah, don't bring
apparently
it.
it
Don't
just
bring
it
it.
just doesn't have like a meaning. It's just like I don't know.
That's the worst
It's
one.
just one. It's just weird.
Is that just
I
like the
don't
new
understand.
Rickrolled? Is when an old person searches what 6'7" means and they're just
Yeah,
wasting their
pretty
time?
much. Pretty much. Yeah. So now you really feel that you're old, even though, technically I'm not that old, but when you don't understand young people's slang, you feel out of it. You'd definitely be understood by a segment of the population, though, if you spoke in Gen Z slang. Not everyone, but there'd be a certain age group that understands you, whereas like Shakespearean English, I don't know, maybe I can't, it's not too hard to understand.
There are definitely some words that have changed their meaning since Shakespeare's time, though. But that man was a genius. A lot of the words that are in those books he invented, right? Like he came up with new words in his books that we now use today.
I'm pretty sure like ly words like lovely, like he like invented that sort of adverb or something like that, or like heaps of them. Maybe not completely invented it as a thing, but he just put ly on the end of a whole bunch of words that had never had it before or something like that. But I have done a bit of drama at school, so I've got a little bit of practice with the old Shakespearean English. I think I did a scene of Taming of the Shrew, and it's kind of funny because you're like reciting the stuff that you kind of understand 80% of, 90% of, but sometimes there's just words that you're like, what?
I reckon Shakespeare and metal would go hard.
Yeah.
Like just the lyrics, just all Shakespearean tongue.
Huh. Now I'm like, that's got to be a thing already.
And you don't think Gen Z slang metal would go
No, please no.
well?
That's probably already a thing too. I mean, if there's a Ned Flanders metal band out there, then there's probably a Shakespearean metal band out there as well.
Hmm.
I think we should look it up. I'll definitely go with Shakespearean because I do think like most people can understand the gist at least of what you're saying, right? Maybe not 100%, but I feel like 60 to 70% will be understood. Maybe it's the same to be said with Gen Z slang, but a lot of it I'll just be like, what is going on? I don't understand it. So I feel like most
Yeah,
people would not understand it.
it's more that when you hear that the modern slang, you're like, why? Like, why are you saying that? It's not helping anybody. Like, it's not comprehensible. It's just
There's
weird in
there's not a
speech.
logical path to how that like
Yeah,
language, or at least it's hard to see it.
my girls watch a bunch of like YouTubers that play like Minecraft or Roblox, and they're just commentating on what's going on in the game the whole time, and it is like so annoying just to hear it over and over. Like, and it's very like certain people that just do it's very monotone and like, oh my gosh, like over and over and over. There's just no dynamic and there's no breathing because they edit it so hard that it's just like non-stop talking. And then my kids start talking like that, and it's the worst. It's the worst. Yeah.
All right. So Shakespeare wins 3 for 3, I think.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to the Lens and Veil podcast. Join Shem, Sam, and Zach as they dive into a designer-focused analysis of First Rat by Gabriele Ausiello and Virginio Gigli.
So today we're going to be talking about First Rat, a game where we're playing a junkyard family of rats who are kind of nestling around the junkyard, picking up all these scraps and bits of cheese and calculators and all sorts of things. in order to eventually train themselves up to become retronauts, build rockets, and fly to the moon, because we all know the moon is made of cheese. It's a very whimsical, fun game. It feels quite nostalgic if you've seen Wallace and Gromit and those sorts of things. And it kind of plays out like a race game. Now, it's a victory point game for winning, but what players are going to do on their turn is they're going to move their rat or rats along this kind of long snaking path up the board, along many different spots, and eventually their rat will make it to the end and they will sort of ascend and become retronauts. And that is one of the 2 in-game timers, when someone has got all 4 of their rats kind of into space, and that will trigger the end of the game. There is also another in-game timer when players have placed out a certain number of cubes. We are placing these cubes out in lots of different areas to score points for having done different things. They sort of function as kind of achievements you've unlocked, or they're kind of contracts you fulfill, and when you fulfill them, you place a cube out. Each of these tracks will start out with the most points being for the person that does the thing first, and those points are slowly going down over the course of the game. What you're going to do on your turn is you are going to either move one of your rats 5 spaces, up to 5 spaces, or the really cool thing is you can move all of your rats, or any number of your rats, up to 3 spaces, provided that the rats land on a different space, but all of them land on the same colored space. So there are 5 different colors, and each of these colored spaces kind of have their own identity. The red and green ones are resource gathering spaces where you're going to pick up baking soda and citric acid and cans and calculators. Those are all the things that we need to make our rockets. We have the yellow spaces, which allow you to collect cheese. Cheese is spent whenever you land on a space that has other rats on it. So you have to pay 1 cheese per player that's already there. If you don't have any cheese, you could always take moldy cheese, which is going to give you 3 cheese, but also it's worth -2 points at the end of the game. So there is that. And then we've got 2 other spaces. We've got the blue and the white spaces. The blue spaces are light bulbs. And what this is going to do is you're going to move your light bulb marker along this track that goes alongside the main action board. And so for every rat that lands on a space which your light bulb is further ahead or equal to that space, then you gain more resources. So it's kind of like powering up the whole board for you based on where your light bulb is. So that's really cool. And then there is also the apple cores, which is probably the hardest to explain. The apple core is another track at the bottom of the board, which is sort of like a giant rondelle with smaller rondelles inside. For each apple core that you generate, you get to move your marker along this rondelle. And at key points, you can sort of decide to take a shortcut back to the start of the rondelle and get a bonus as you cross through. Or you can take the longer path and keep going around the bigger rondelle around the outside. And each of these bonuses provide different things. So the shortest path around the rondelle is going to give you access to comics. Comics are basically like, they're the same power level as like a normal variable player power. They allow you to break rules in the game, and they're really game defining. The middle path of the rondelle, so if you cut out at the kind of the second longest route, you get to unlock a new rat. So we start the game with only 2 of our rats available on the board, and so you could raise a new rat and manage 3 rats for your turns and eventually get your 4th rat out there. Or the longest part of the rondelle on this apple core track is just going to allow you to place a cube down to gain points. And of course, first in gets the most points, and then those points drop down. The other key thing with this game is that the further up the main board that you are, the closer you are to the end, is the more powerful the actions are going to be. There are a few shortcuts on the main board where you can spend resources to kind of go through these tunnels. They sort of function like ladders in Snakes and Ladders, and there's a bit of a parallel in this game with Snakes and Ladders. And then there are the snake equivalent where there are shops. There are shops at 3 key points on the map, and if you stop there, At the end of your turn, you can buy an ability. We have backpacks. Backpacks are going to be colored and they are going to buff a particular color of action for you based on which one you choose. There are energy drinks at another spot, which is going to double the strength of one of your gather actions, which can be really, really strong if you're triggering 4 rats. And there are bottle caps, which are emergent scoring point conditions. Now, the interesting thing with these shops is that you can either choose to buy the boon, spending 6, 7, 8, up to 12 cheese, I think it is, or you can just rob the shop. And if you rob the shop, you could go all the way back to the start, but you get it for free. So there's a really interesting decision for the player if they're going to keep their rat further up, be ahead in the race, and keep benefiting from the stronger actions that are above the board, or they could just take this really strong boon, rob the shopkeeper, come back to the start, and then do the run again, now this time benefiting from all their light bulbs if they've moved their light bulb track along the board. So it sounds like there's a lot going on, and there are kind of quite a few ways that you could engine build, but the core loop of the game is very simple. You're either going to move one rat up to 5 spaces and generate where they land, or move up to all of your rats up to 3 spaces and generate resources. And that, for me, is the really interesting puzzle. If you can move multiple rats and do that in such a way that you benefit from all of those actions, it's really interesting. So I want to start with a question for you guys. What are your thoughts on this core loop of trying to move multiple rats? How did you find that?
Well, we recently did our top 10, and first rat made it into mine at number 7, so that means I really like the game. And I found this core loop to be just very fun, very satisfying puzzle, very simple to understand, but not simple to pull off in like a really efficient and clever way, like while you're playing. So yeah, I think that core action loop is the genius of the game. And I've said it before, to me it feels like if someone made like a good version of Snakes and Ladders. I know it's not roll and move, but because you're kind of like, because it's got this thing of you're climbing up towards the top of the board, but at these certain points you can steal stuff and drop back to the beginning. So it's kind of got that feeling of like you're trying to go up, but at the same time sometimes you go back down. So there's this kind of flow of up and down. The genius thing about like you can move one or you can move all of them is like such a puzzle. And trying to like line it up so that you can move, like you've unlocked some extra rats and you can move like 3 of them at once because you're going to get all the bonuses for all 3 of them. But it's really hard to get in a situation where you can move all 3 of them onto the same color without being on top of each other. So it's like, are you wasting time trying to set up for that big move? And like, should you just have been moving 1, 5? So there's just so much like ways that you second guess what you're doing. You're like, oh, was that actually the best way to play it? And I know when we played it in the office, we played it 2 times in a row, and I would have played it a third time as well, like in a row, honestly, because it's not very long. It's not very hard to understand. It doesn't have much setup, but it's just quite fun, in my opinion.
I think at its heart, it's really a tactical optimization puzzle. So you're thinking about like, what can I do a lot of on my turn? And you could just move 1 rat and get 3 light bulbs if you're further up. But if you go further back, maybe you can get like 3 bottle caps, three bottles or whatever it might be, the resource you want to grab. But then there's 2 things that kind of throw the wrinkle for me is one is, do you actually need that thing times 3 or is the times 2 better based on what you're actually trying to get? Because you are trying to focus on certain things. So maybe you're trying to go heavy into apple cores in this game. So you want to hit that spot as much as you can with as many rats as you can, but maybe to try and make that happen, you have to take a little turn in between. So what's that in between turn going to be? Are you also going to go for light bulbs? So you're also going to pick up some cheese. So you're trying to sequence like focusing on what you want and trying to figure out what are you doing in the meantime. The other wrinkle though is that if you land where other players are, you have to pay them cheese. So it's not just like you can plan out every move as you please and go wherever you want and sequence those things, because that puzzle on its own, like the one versus many, isn't that interesting if there's no chaos, because you can just go, if I go here now, then next turn, it's bam, bam, bam. I can do whatever I want. But then suddenly Zach moves both of his guys onto those 2 spots. I'm like, that's cheese I have to pay him. So maybe I don't have the cheese. So that works for me because it's like, it's not just about the sequencing thing, which is fun, but it's the fact that you have to react to other players. It's not just you on your own track. You're actually really looking at what they're doing, what are they picking up, what are they racing for is a big part of the game as well. So, you know, maybe I need one more component so that I can build the bottom part of my rocket ship. But I can see Zach's also very close to building that bottom part as well. Where's he going his turn? And where do I think he's going his turn? Oh, he needs that particular like whatever cereal box or something. So if I go here now, if he wants to go there on the next turn, he has to pay me a cheese. So there's some extra layers there, which is good. Otherwise, it would feel very much like a Snakes and Ladders Plus without the dice in a way. But all those layers do help to add a bit more depth to the game.
Yeah, and my favorite thing to do, just speaking about this core loop, is get all four of my rats really quickly. So go hard into the apple cores, try and race around that rondel quickly, have all four rats going, and then pick up the comic, which means that when I get to move all my rats, I can move up to four rather than just three, which often is that break point to being able to do those extra actions. And it kind of feels, I'm not a juggler, but it kind of feels like juggling. Just add another ball into the mix, add another ball into the mix. And now I've got these four rats to try to juggle, to try and manage. And if you can pull it off, it's incredibly satisfying. There's cute little things you can do where your two rats are kind of very close to each other and they're going to want to land in those same spaces, which you can't do. But you can send one of the rats up a tunnel to go further ahead to get some distance to try and make sure that you can wrangle all those rats. And I find that the more kind of stressful the puzzle is, the more balls you've got to juggle, the more satisfying it can be when you pull it off, for sure.
Yeah, and once again, those tunnels, they're like the ladders, man. One of the other reasons why this makes me think of Snakes and Ladders. I don't know whether the designers had that in their minds when they were making it, whether that was like, let's make it good Snakes and Ladders or something, but definitely, like, after playing it, that was my impression. But yeah, that added thing of the tunnels, it's like, then is it worth spending those resources to go up the tunnel to then be able to use all my rats? But then you're like, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You can also unlock some powers to make that cheaper and stuff like that. So I don't know. And there's quite a lot of different directions you can go, right? Because you can go hard into the light bulbs and just getting heaps of resources. You can go hard into the apple course in terms of trying to unlock more powers and more rats. And then there's the whole tactical thing. It's like, well, I want to be one of the first two or three people to do that thing. But to be honest, if Sam and Shem are rushing that certain thing, if I go and do it, I'm going to get less points. So I should try and rush the cheese. I'll get heaps of cheese and sell that off, and I'll get a whole bunch of points over here. But then there's also a variable set up in terms of what things are worth more. So it's kind of like lots of mini races going on at the same time as racing up the board. And yeah, I don't know, like, not that I necessarily love race games in general, but this is one that I really appreciated.
I think it pulls some comparisons to worker placement in a little way where you have, is it four rats you can have at most? Four or
Yeah,
five?
four.
Four. You start with two, like Sam said, and you can unlock more. And often in worker placement games, they have this kind of setup where it's like you start with two and you can buy two or three more. Often it's just like getting those workers is amazing and you should get them quickly as you can. Maybe there's a food cost like in Cooper Island or whatever where you have to pay to maintain them. But this game does a good job of kind of getting around that. Like you can, like Sam is saying he likes to do, rush and get them quickly and set up these cool combo actions. If you don't do that, you can actually race your one or two rats very quickly up the board, and now you've got far better actions to choose from, better, stronger actions. So there's a cool thing of like you can go get all your rats quickly and do these kind of combo power actions, or you can just race up and get, powerful actions. Also, whenever you place a rat at the very end of the board, they launch off on their rocket, you get a new rat automatically. So unlocking them, taking time around that bottom rondelle to unlock them is a bit of effort, but if you just race them up, then you get one for free anyway. So it's like, well, it's a good kind of tension there. And also, like I was saying with worker placement, a lot of worker placements, especially older ones, there was a bit of a flaw. Like if you didn't get those workers, you're kind of falling behind. Whereas in this setting, it's not really the issue. Like you can actually play both ways. You can play the lean, only have two rats for most of the game, or two or three rats, or you can rush them and play that way. And they seem to be both equally viable ways of playing as well.
I feel like it's kind of that thing that I think we've done in lots of our games as well, where it's like maybe having four rats has a higher potential, but probably is a lot harder to pull off. But having less rats is kind of easier to manage and is probably going to score better more often. And I feel like that's probably the kind of way that they tried to balance it, and it feels viable in every way that you could play it, having three rats and just trying to stay with unlocking one with the apple cores and then just unlocking another one when you send one to the top or trying to unlock all four and just move up the map with all four of them. Yeah, I think it's all different viable ways of playing and winning the game.
It's also your choice of what actions you're taking. So if you're not doing the apple core, which means you're not getting those extra rats quickly, that means you're doing other stuff. So if Sam's rushing his apple cores to do that, he's going around the track, get his workers early. What am I doing? Like, I must be doing something else, right? So maybe I'm actually closer to building parts of the rocket or closer on my light bulb track than he is. So, like, it's not just the fact that he's getting them quicker, it's that he's actually, most of his actions are spent getting them quicker. So he's missed out on other actions. It's a nice little balancing thing there as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about that interaction in the game and how I sort of feel like with the cheese rule, the designers are pushing people to try doing the things that others aren't doing. And I think that that's a good thing if there are different viable paths in the game. And I think in this game, what it does really, really well, which I don't think I've seen a game do it this well. For a game that is so simple, it has so many paths that feel unique. There are different ways of powering up. So what do you guys think about that cheese rule and what that does for player interaction and ultimately your decision making in the game? Because Shem, you said the game feels tactical, and I think I agree, because if you just go ahead with what was your best move all the time, what you were planning to do, you might end up spending a lot of cheese and paying that to other players.
I think the optimization puzzle, the movement puzzle was tactical. That's what I guess what more I was saying than how you play as a player. Like you need to have a strategy and a path you're trying to pursue, but you have to respond to the board state constantly. So that's where the tactics kind of comes in.
The two ways that the game pushes you to go for things that others aren't doing. One is the cheese rule. So if everyone is gathering resources, calculators and baking soda and all of that, then their rats are going to be on those spots. So to land there and do the same thing as them, you're going to have to pay them cheese. But there's also this thing where, okay, so if everyone is going for baking soda and vinegar, then they've got their propulsion of their rockets sorted out. They're going to be placing those cubes up there. And so there's going to be diminishing returns if you're later to build those parts of the rockets. You're not going to score as many points. So you're also encouraged to try something different from other players. What do you guys think of this style of game design, I guess, encouraging players to do slightly divergent things?
I like the timing of it because you also, like you said, if someone goes where you wanted to go for the cheese, you just wait a turn and they're likely moved off, right? So there is this kind of timing element in seeing what the players are doing. One thing that you mentioned in the overview, Sam, that I don't think we ever did was to take rotten cheese. Like, did we ever do that?
It's slightly more common in 5-player,
Ah, okay.
but yeah. I did it once maybe in our game, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even think I remember it being a thing. I remember there being a rotten cheese piece, but I don't remember ever considering taking it. But yeah, it's probably more of a high player count thing.
Yeah, I didn't take any rotten cheese either. I do think the game is pushing you to go for different things, but at the same time, because of the variable setup of how much stuff scores, there are some that score better than others, right? If you're the first or second cube to place in. So at the same time, there's a tension there because it's like once other people have already started placing cubes, then it's like, yes, I need a pivot. But at the beginning, it's kind of like, well, the same two things look the best for everyone, right? That's kind of like you want to get the jump on that thing. And then maybe once you get the jump on it, then you go into whatever no one else is doing. So at the same time, I feel like there is a bit of initial tension in terms of like racing to those things that are going to score the most points with the first cube that goes in. But then, yeah, then there's definitely a kind of a decision-making thing about like where can I go that no one else is building towards that happens as the game goes on, I think, which is also adding to that kind of tactical element of the game. Like the scoring is tactical as well. And you can't just be like, I'm going to do this and score all that. And then like if everyone else goes for the same thing and puts their cubes in, then it's like, well, now I need to pivot to something else because it's full of cubes anyway, of scoring cubes, so I can't put any more.
For me, that kind of brings it to where I have a slight issue with the game, where there's the engine building and then the race mechanisms. And for me, they kind of clash because engine building is about strategy, right? Like preparing for things, working towards a path. And if you start doing that quickly in the game without paying attention, or maybe, just a few turns out of sequence or whatever, and you realize, oh, actually that player's got a slightly better engine and they've got a better start towards that thing that I was going to go for, then your engine might be like, oh, it's actually not as good now because say I was like really trying to push for sets of the building the parts of the rocket. And now I see that Sam or Zach has got a better tile or a better engine or a better thing that they are now going to be faster than me. I can see at that point even, or even it's going to be a few turns later that I notice they're going to be faster at me. So they're going to get more points than me in the area. So my engine I was kind of building is kind of dumb for the thing I was pushing for. And you can pivot. You can change up your strategy. But I think given the fact that it's a race game at its core for how you score points, you are racing for points. If your engine suddenly you realize that what you tried to build is a bit naff compared to other players, then you're kind of like, oh, it's kind of a write-off. I don't think I can win that game now based on what I've built. So the good thing though is that it's a fast game. So if this is a long 2 hour game, I would choose not to play this game basically, because if the engine was that volatile for the end game condition, I'd be like, well, you're clearly won in the first half an hour. But the fact that it's a very quick game helps save the game for me, because it's like, well, yes, maybe you realize, 10 minutes in that, my engine sucks. Like I haven't got what I thought I was going to have, and now that player's better than me. At least I know in 20 minutes we can play the game again. So yeah, it's a good thing. But there's a little bit of a weird thing going for me with the whole engine building versus the race that's going on.
I kind of want to unpack that a bit, and maybe it's putting you on the spot, but I'm intrigued by the general design concept here, because there are lots of Euro style games, which are obviously longer, more involved, that try to give good incentive for being the first person to do stuff, right? There are games that give you bonuses, like SETI has that for the first person to get upgrade tile, things like that. That's just the first example that came to mind. Have you seen this tension before and this issue before, where there's engine building, you build your engine a certain way, but you miss out on the first bonus because someone else is doing that? Have you seen this in other Euro games? Has this bothered you before?
Not that I can think of, but I can see it being a thing. I don't know if it's so dependent on engine building though. Like there's definitely tons of games that can have races, like you mentioned a bunch already, but not so much that like you spend time building an engine to be better at that thing. Because it's not so much like, oh, you got that one thing before me or that one thing here before me. It's like you got that entire scoring race, like that focus for the game before me. So let's say like we both think, oh, I'm going to race that apple core track. I'm going to try and get like the first 3 cubes in there. That's kind of my focus. And I start getting them. But then Sam's like, well, I'll do this thing instead, and gets a tile. And then suddenly he can just race around way faster than I can. He beats me to them. So it's like he gets the top 3 points, I get the lower 3 points, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of more what I was leaning towards. Whereas most of the other games where you see races, it's like it's a little bonus along the way. Whereas this is like the end destination, like it's the points that matter in the game. So yeah.
Do you think this is like a design contrast that we should keep in mind? Like these two things potentially butting heads in other games? Or, is it something to be aware of, or is it very specific to First Rat, do you think?
I think that engine building and races can be at conflict for sure, because
Right.
I guess in most Euro games that have heavy engine building, it's in a sense it is kind of a race to get points, but maybe you're not racing against each other for those points. So it's about scoring well in a certain area. Other players might not have so much influence on how well you score. So your engine that you're running, think of like a strong car game, like I don't know, like It's a Wonderful World or something, where it's like all about you building your card engine and how many points can you generate from that engine over 5 rounds, or whatever it is, 4 rounds. But other players aren't interfering so much with that. There's going to be little drafting and bonus things where they take things away that you wanted, all that kind of thing. But in this one, you are very much like you can see physically on the board those points being taken away from you, the points that you thought you're going to get are taken away. And it's that whole thing that we've seen in many games where if everyone goes for the same thing, then they're all going to kind of score lower, or one player is going to be far better and get all the high points. And so you're better off actually going for something that others aren't going for. But in this game, we don't really know from the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 turns what someone's going for. So you might pick up a tile thinking, I'll start going for this thing, or get a little bonus thing for that. And then you suddenly realize, oh, you were going to think of going for that too? Oh, okay, and you've got a better setup. So it's hard to respond, and it's kind of like wasted turns, I guess. Yeah.
I think, Architects of the West Kingdom is somewhat analogous in the cathedral race, because I think sometimes similar things can happen there where, if 2 people race for the cathedral and one picks up an apprentice that lets them not spend the green cards or something like that, maybe then they don't have to waste turns picking up green cards, and, they could feel that similar thing. I don't think it's like as core, like it's only one tiny part of the game, so I don't think it's like the same, but I think you can get a few of those situations in certain matches of architects where maybe you get some of those same feelings.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. But in my head, first rat is like architects where there's 8 different cathedrals
Yeah.
and you're all racing for the top and you're choosing which ones you want to race for. If I go for A and B and so do you, and Sam's like, cool, I'll have C through F and X and I'll get the top
Yeah.
of those and we'll compete for those two. That's the kind of feelings it is.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And if we've acquired the apprentices for those particular cathedrals, then it's like, well, cool. That's kind of the right. But like I was saying, it's a snappy game and it's fun and tactical to play. So it kind of, you can wash over that stuff. It's only for me on repeat plays that I notice this kind of stuff for me personally. And it is a personal thing. Like it's not, I'm not saying it's an issue with the game. It's a
Yeah.
flavor thing. It's what I like in games. So it was on repeat plays that I realized actually there's kind of some weird stuff going on here that I don't really, not so much a fan of. But on first play, like you just have fun racing, right? It's the puzzle, it's the figuring out how to play and all the different like interactions with other players and stuff. So yeah.
I do also though like wonder if it's a frustration about like what you go into the game wanting to do and then what other people do. Because like I think you can go into this game with a strategy, you're like, oh man, or like what you want to explore in the game in this match. You're like, oh, I really want to explore this strategy. And then it's like someone else does it better than you, and it makes it just hard for you to play it. And so you're like, oh well, that wasn't fun because I wanted to try the Apple Core thing, but Sam like was taking all the Apple Core spots. And so, in that way, I think it's kind of a hard game to explore because if you're going to try and play it well, you're only going to explore whatever's the kind of the tactically best strategy for you to take according to what other people are doing as well. So I think that in some ways is frustrating because I remember my second game of it, like the first game I'd done light bulbs, and the second game I wanted to do apple cores, and I think both of you were doing them, and it was just like, okay, well, I can't do that,
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to take this topic and do a little bit more of a deep dive into asymmetry, even though this is not a game that has got variable player powers. But I think what you guys are alluding to is, when we're talking about our strategy in the game, there's two sorts of things that really define our strategy. One is if we've got a backpack, and a backpack is saying, hey, whenever you go to a blue spot that gives you light bulbs, you get 2 additional light bulbs for these actions. That's really powerful. That's something which is really defining your strategy, that you want to be hitting those blue ones. And the other one are those comics. And this is where I want to lean in, those comics, which are very analogous to player powers in a game where you start with player powers, like a Circadian's First Light or whatever. And I think some of these are very much defined, and they're saying you should do this thing, you should pursue this strategy. So one example is the one that lets you treat green and red spaces as if they're the same color. Now that's immensely powerful for moving all of your rats, because now you're way more likely to be able to get them all to a spot. It's just either red or green. They're both going to trigger off. Now, if you've got that tile, that's what you want to do. But the red and the green spaces are ones that are gathering resources that you would then use as free actions to build these parts of your rocket. And so that's a very predetermined strategy. If you've got that tile, you're going to want to build the rockets. So if someone else is going for rockets, you're just going to be getting less points because there's more competition on those tracks. And there's a little bit more, interaction for those earlier spaces to get more points. So if you've got that tile and someone else starts doing that thing, like what Shem was talking about, you're not going to benefit so much, and it's going to be a little bit contested. Whereas there are other powers which are a little bit more generalist, and I think these are ones where actually if someone starts doing the thing you wanted to do, you can pivot, and it's totally fine. Like powers that let you go through tunnels for free. Well, now I don't actually have to land on the light bulb spots or the apple core spots. I can land on anywhere. I just want to make sure I'm using those tunnels. Or the power that I mentioned at the start where you can move all of your rats up to 4 spaces, not the 3, the normal restriction. And what I want to talk about with this is the idea, and I've come across it in designing First Light as an example, and maybe Shem's experience with Skara Bray and Era of Experts. When coming up with variable player powers, you can either give the character, the leader, the player power, a niche, a thing that they're really good at, and that is kind of telling the player, hey, do this thing. Or what the goal is to have a slightly more general ability where they can kind of exercise agency and do anything well. And I think in all of these games that we've designed characters that have general abilities, but we've also designed specialists. And I think the problem is that there's not enough general abilities that feel unique enough that they can all do that, that they can all have just a general approach to the game, that they're good in various different ways and they can exercise agency in those ways. You kind of get to this point where you run out of ideas or run out of options within the game's framework that you have to start designing specialists and guys that are, or people that are really good at specific things. And so, yeah, I'm interested in hearing you guys' thoughts on that, on designing asymmetry and the push and pull between generalists and specialists.
The key like thing for me that's really important when you are designing like player powers or whatever is that they need to have multiple ways to be played. So, like you said, specialist as a term. Even if there's a specialist who's like really good at one thing, they should still be able to play the game in different ways. Otherwise, you are kind of just playing the way that the designer's telling you to play, and
Exactly, yeah.
it's not very fun. So let's say there was one in this game, just make it up. Let's say there's one that's just like really super strong on light bulbs. Like anytime you get a light bulb, you see a cheese or something else, or it's all about hitting those light bulb spaces. Well, then you don't have much decision. You have to hit those spaces. There's no other way to get the light bulbs to say it's all about hitting those blue spots. And that's fine. Like it's fine as a power, but you play it once or twice and you've probably done that. You've played it and you don't want to explore it more. When I was doing it for Scarab Bray, it was about not just having a unique kind of feeling and a different power that you have that maybe encourages you to play a different way. It was making sure they all have a different way of being played. So, as an example, Explore is a card in Scarab Bray where you get to draw new cards from the top of the deck. You could play that to go for settlers, get lots of cards below your board, but it's a struggle to feed them. But if you can, and you can get your finishing track up, then you can score huge points. But the other way to play that is to try and get the other cards which aren't settlers, and you play them down to get more stone balls, or you get better improvements for your health limit and stuff, and their points, and you don't have to feed them. So there's kind of two paths of playing that player power, and yeah, that's kind of always my hope for a player power is that they're not pigeonholed. They're not like you have to play this way. There's room to explore within the powers.
And are they ever pigeonholed? I mean, Explore is a great example of one that isn't. But is there ever a scenario where it's like, actually, this player power is really cool, it's interesting, it does something different from other factions, but they kind of have to do this thing?
I try not to.
Right.
I mean, I don't go through them off the top of my head, but Scarab Bray has a lot more liberties than First Rat because there's like 16 resources. So there's a lot of different things you can lean on and different card types and stuff you can do. And you can always introduce new components with Scarab Bray. Like the spin wheel gives you a whole new card that no one else has, for example. So
I guess with Scarab Bray, it's kind of interesting in that you've got the option to lean into your power or you don't. Because of the action economy in the game, it doesn't feel as punishing to not lean into your player power because you can do other things that are just as beneficial. Whereas a game like First Light, if I'm not using my character's ability, I can take to the bank that other players are going to use their character's ability, and so you feel like you've kind of missed out on the opportunity. I think Scarab Bray is a little more, yeah, I mean, it's less pigeonholed because you don't even have to touch your ability and you can play the game really well and you can score well.
I think it's always a bit on a spectrum as well, right? Because some of them are going to be more generalist. You're going to have more ways of playing them. Some of them are going to have less. I do agree with Shem where it's like you never want to just have one way because that is just kind of that's the whole like on rails thing. Like this is the only way you play this, and it's just kind of like, what's the point? It's programmed. This faction is programmed to play in this way, and you're playing in that way. I definitely feel though with like Chaos Order, there are some factions that have much more liberty and some where you have to be a lot more focused. Sometimes it's to do with like how hard it is to achieve their fame victory goal. But we also were able to combat that. Like for example, I think Oxatea, for example, they need a lot of battles to win, so they need to focus on getting in a lot of fights. So it does feel kind of like this is the way to play them. But we combated that in Chaos Order by having the whole relic victory thing. So even if you're not doing that well on your fame, trying to get that objective, there's another complete different objective to win the game that's the same for everyone. So that's already creating two ways that you could play the game for each of the factions. Then not to mention what we did with leaders, like having all these different powers that kind of give you different ways to achieve your goals as a faction, but you're not actually playing with all of them at the same time necessarily. So that was another way to create kind of like player choice within that asymmetry.
another key part is like you should have those moments when you look to your neighbor on your left or right and you say, oh, I wish I had that power right now. But that should always be a thing in these kind of games. And looking at these tiles for first rat, there's the one that whenever you land somewhere, you don't pay cheese. It's like the amount of times like I wish I had your power right now because it would save me cheese. Or the one
100%.
that go through tunnels, or like the one that's always like, oh, I always pay one fewer resource for a rocket ship. But if you had that power, you'd still look to your neighbor and be like, I wish I had that power. Like you always want someone else's ability in the game at certain times. So that means to me, on the surface, that they're fun. Like they are fun to have and fun to acquire, which is always important if it's a thing you opt into in a game.
Yeah, they've absolutely nailed the brief of these comics, these little ongoing powers, little rule breakers being compelling. And they make you want to play the game again, trying out these different powers because they are quite game defining. What if I get to skip tunnels? What if I get to move further along? And I think we're just coming into this whole wider conversation topic, this cursed problem of game breaking abilities that are compelling and fun, which is why they're there, but also sometimes they take a little bit of agency away from the player, just a little bit. Now, sometimes that's a thing that the player wants. They want their decision space reduced so that they can kind of take some opportunities away, knowing those aren't as efficient for me anymore, and I get to kind of beeline on this thing. But other players that love expressing themselves creatively, or that feel like someone else has limited the potential of their strategy because they're contesting it, well, if you care a lot about the result, perhaps then that's going to leave a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth because you picked a strategy that could have been really good. You did nothing wrong, and someone else just got in your way. And now player C over there, who happened to not be contested, seems to get a good break. And so I think that's also a feature of games with more than two players as well. That's just like the cabal, in a way, gets to decide who wins the game, not just the who played the best. You know, there's that uncertainty of the groupthink and how the table plays the game, not just the luck or not just the skill.
It's a cursed problem of interaction, right? Because in some games, it's like where there's lots of positive interaction. Like I've been in that situation before where we're playing a three-player game, and it's like you and Shem are doing positive interaction, and it's like I'm somewhere else, so I'm missing out on it. If I think of like Endeavor, Deep Sea, or
Yeah, we're just scratching each other's backs, sitting around the fire, singing Kumbaya. You're not invited.
exactly, you're going around the same area and you're getting benefits. And then the third player, there's like, oh man, like I'm falling behind because I'm missing out on all this stuff. And then in other games, it's like everyone's picking on this player, and there's the other player over there that's not getting picked on, and they just can freely like get stronger, right? So I feel like it's a problem in interactive games. It's a cursed problem, but at the same time, we love interactive games. We love the interaction. So it's like, how can you try and reduce the unbalance that comes, like the unbalance, I don't know if that's the right word, but the imbalance, that's the word. How can you reduce the imbalance that comes from that? And I think that's a thing that a lot of designers try to achieve, right? Is reducing the imbalances that come from those sorts of interactions.
And you're ultimately just landing on some amalgam of the three things that determine a winner. Like if you're saying, I don't want the table to decide the winner as much, then you're going to be leaning into luck or player skill. And if we go full hard into player skill, then it's going to become like chess. So, which is great for a two-player game, but obviously we don't want the best player to. It's a hard one. Do you want the best player to always win? I think you want players to feel like they've got a chance to win, to even beat someone that's better than them. But you want the best player to win more often than not, right? So it's just a really interesting dynamic how we determine who wins a game, and you're ultimately somewhere in the middle of those three options, those three factors: the luck, the skill, and the table.
Well, if you imagine that there's somehow a three-player game of chess, I feel like the best player is no longer just the player who makes the best moves, but the player who manages to manipulate the other two players the most. And that's, I mean, social deduction. That's a feature of social deduction, is manipulating others, but also manipulating them in terms of, making them think he's going to move in certain ways and then try and play them off against one another, right? So it's like who's the best player becomes different when you're talking, or who's the most skilled player. Skill takes on a different element when there's more people at the table. And I think that's just a feature, you know?
I think it's more of like a player preference too. So, like talking about these three different areas to determine a winner, it's really about like what does the player like? What do they want? Like I don't mind a bit of luck. I don't mind a bit of chaos in games because it means that like the best player's not always winning. But I don't like it when it's so heavy on the table to determine the winner. And there's kind of two extremes of this. First rat is one where it's about like the players who interact the most will probably lose. because they're competing. The other extreme is Hans Teutonica, where it's the player who no one interacts with will probably lose because they're not getting the benefits.
Yeah.
So there's this also a spectrum within this kind of game determining kind of factor. It's like, is it the player who's always interacting or the player who's never interacting? So if this is going to be a factor, I think I want that kind of in the middle where there's both positive and negative happening. If it's always one or the other, then it feels, I don't know, I don't enjoy it as much. So because I bounce off this game a little bit because of that, because it's so like there's so much competition for the points in your face competition type feeling of you can see on the board. And with Hans and Teutonica, it's like it's the opposite. Like if you guys just don't bump me off the board and don't give me benefits and don't interact with my stuff, I'm just in my corner doing my thing and getting no benefits. And you kind of feel as a player that it wasn't necessarily my fault, like that you didn't want to interact. Like I'd get in your face and interact with you, but maybe that's just helping you more. It's not actually helping me. So I kind of want somewhere in the middle where there's good competition, but also there's some good ways for players to kind of help each other out as well.
I want to talk about a few more things because I think they're really interesting. One is the shops. So there's these 3 spots on the board where at the start you can buy a backpack that's costs you 6 cheese. And the backpacks are simply colored and they've got a +1 or a +2. When you take an action on one of these colored spaces, get 1 or 2 more resources of that type. Obviously, this is very compelling. And if you are going with an all-in strategy of apple cores or building the rockets or light bulbs, getting one of these early game is going to benefit you a lot because every time you do that, you're going to get more. And then we've got the energy drinks, which for my first 5 or 6 plays of the game, I just thought these guys were trash. Like just doubling one action and then it's spent and it's done. I thought, I don't want to spend 7 cheese to do this. And it's at about the halfway point of the map. So going back to the start from there feels quite costly. But you guys showed me. You guys showed me how epic it can be. If you've got 4 rats going and they're near the top, some of them are near the top, and you double that. And if there's some light bulb additions being added in, oh my goodness, you can get a lot of resources. And in one fell swoop, you can build a lot of rockets parts. Amazing. So that surprised me in a good way that this thing that I thought wasn't viable actually is viable. And then also we've got the bottle caps, which is just the classic emergent scoring points for having done different things. What I want to talk about is this thing, which I think is lovely. The fact that you can pay the cheese and get the thing and you maintain where you are, which has a lot of value because the spaces get better higher up and you're getting closer to getting your rat to the top, which is worth points and gets you another rat or more points. So that's great. That's really cool. But the designers also said, actually, if you want this thing, you can have it for free. There you go. Take it and just go back to the start. I think this is just such an interesting design idea that, hey, actually, you can take it for free and the cost for you is tempo and the cost for you is managing your rats. What do you guys think about that idea with the shops?
Yeah, I think what you said there about tempo is kind of the key, where it's really hard as a player to actually like quantify what that cost is. Like,
Yeah,
you don't know. I mean, if there was none of this going on, if it was all about like each rat gets you roughly 1 to 3 resources and you can kind of figure out roughly what a turn is worth, then that's, maybe you can somewhat solve not necessarily the game, but your plan for the game. But when you suddenly go, oh, you can go back, 10, 15 spaces if you want. Like, well, what's that going to do? Like, how's it going to impact my game? I don't know. How's it going to mess up my sequencing? So I think of all the players that, we played with, I think I was probably the most unlikely to go back. I was often spending the cheese. So it's a weird kind of player style type thing as well. Where like, I think Sam, you're reckless. You're like, yeah, go back, just get all the stuff for free. Who cares? And then catch up,
And I still don't know what's better. I still don't know
Yeah.
which of those two is better. It's so contextual, right? It's really interesting.
But yeah, it's a good decision to make as well. And in the moment, you're like, well, because maybe you've got 3 rats on the board. So maybe sitting one back is not actually that much of an issue because the other one's way further up. Maybe that one going back actually lands very close to an action that you wanted to take soon anyway. So it's not so much of a sacrifice. But when you've got like 1 or 2, I guess, 2 rats on the board, sending one back does feel like quite a cost.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It reminds me in some ways of the tax stand in Architects where it's like, how much money is worth the 2-drop in virtue? Because it's also kind of hard to quantify like what that 2-drop in virtue is going to mean, because that could be you ending up later on in the game taking like another 3 debts or something like that. but it could also be not that much. So it's kind of like that. I'm not sure quite how to quantify that thing, which I think is what you're talking about is a really good situation to put the player in because it makes it kind of like this fun kind of like I will take the cost and find out, and then maybe find out that it was a bad decision. But, maybe I'll be able to make it work as well. Another thing it makes me think of is kind of what you were saying about your play style, Shem, and this is because we've been playing a bit of Scarab Bray recently because it's coming to BGA. How like often how you play Shem is you play like the get lots of roofs, keep everything clean, and it's like a really good way of playing Scarab Bray. And I tend towards the like build a massive stack of people, like midden for days, have heaps of food, and it's kind of like the risky strat because you can just get so many minus points that you cancel out anything good that you make, but there's also potential there to score heaps of points. I feel like in some ways it's the similar thing with this where it's like it could just really completely stuff your game, like screw you over coming back. But it has that potential to like, if you rush up and then like steal two of those backpack, I think you can get two, right? You can get two different ones. If you can just like, if you do that really quickly and then you've got all these rats coming up with all these bonuses, like maybe you can make it pay off in the end, like maybe if the game goes long enough, it can be worth it. And so I don't know. It's just for me, it's such a fun element when there's those kind of like the good way and the bad way to play the game, and both are viable. But where like the bad way is like probably slightly harder to pull off. But if you do, you feel good. But then you can also just go the completely different way and make that work as well. So yeah, I don't know. It's just whenever I find that sort of like multiple ways to play, and as I was alluding to earlier, where there's like a lower ceiling but high probability of making it work, and then a higher ceiling but lower probability of making it work. Like I enjoy that so much in games where there's kind of different paths like that.
It's a good decision too, how it's about you're spending potential points in a way and potential tempo, or actual tempo, I guess, for a power rather than say points. Because we've played, I forget which game it was, but recently we played a game, or last year, where there was always opportunity to spend more resources for more points. And it was always a really strange decision to make because you don't know if you need those resources later. Like it's like, well, points are great, but do I really want to do this? Where in this situation, it's like almost on the flip side. Like, do you want to lose some points to, you lose something essentially, to have more power? And it's a really good decision in the game where like you're sacrificing, like if it was just like obvious, like, oh, lose 5 points to get this thing, that's an easy decision in a way because you can figure out, oh yeah, I can make that back. But when it's like it's the cheese you may have wanted for your next action and it's the distance you've traveled, it's really hard to figure out, like, is it worthwhile?
That's right. It's a lot more nebulous, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much is this tempo really valued to me? And I think there is a cool overlap, though. If you've gone for a light bulb strategy, then moving back means going back through those areas, you're going to benefit more. And you can even get more light bulbs to help your guys that are further ahead that normally wouldn't have benefited from light bulbs. So there is some really interesting interplay there. And to me, this is just another argument that this game adds to its list of arguments for why you want to play again. Because not only is it the strategic things around the backpacks and the comics, which feel really different and all of that, but it's those micro decisions around, well, I'm going to take this power, but am I going to pay for it or am I not? And how does it feel to have this tempo versus how does it feel to come back to the start and have a lot of cheese? Yeah, it's so interesting. And when those questions don't have an obvious answer that's an all the time thing, or even a good rule of thumb that I've figured out, maybe if there's a competitive like scene for First Rat, maybe they've figured it out. But to me, it's still an unsolved. And so therefore I get to approach it however I want each time. It's very compelling.
I think that brings up an interesting point, and I think we've talked about it in other podcasts as well. How it's like when you're taking an action and you're like, this is worth 3 points, taking this action. I don't know. It's less fun for me. Like when something's like more nebulous, as we're talking about, where it's like you can't quite figure out, you like think this is the right thing to do, but it's not just like maths, right? Because if you just wanted to do a mathematical puzzle, you could go and do a mathematical puzzle. But board games bring us into a theme. They want us to be immersed in kind of a setting. And so if the better they can hide the maths behind it and the longer it takes you to see behind the curtain keeps that mystery and that excitement alive. And it's like sometimes when you see behind the curtain, then the game loses some of that enamours and you don't feel as excited to play it again. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, definitely. Like Century, is it what it's called? Century Spice Road. That game is like every single card is weighted exactly what it's worth. So as soon as you realize what resources are worth, you know that card is worth exactly the amount of points it tells you it's worth. So there's no mystery in the game at all, which kind of does make it feel like, that's not as exciting. Like, yes, it's so perfectly balanced, but the charm is kind of gone. Like, I want some mystery and some, unknowns to be in the games that I play. So it's more of a discovery feel each time. And you always feel like there was something I probably did wrong that I didn't see, that I made a wrong choice and it was hidden behind the curtain and I couldn't see behind the curtain. So if I can see, like you're saying, then it's kind of like, oh well, I could have got more points, probably if I played better. Like, and I could have figured
Yeah.
it out if I wanted to, but whereas I want that almost like it's like you can blame the chaos of the game in a way. Like it's not my bad play. There was something I didn't see, or it's kind of a nice outing for like playing badly in a way. Whereas other game's perfect, you're like, yeah, it was me. That was
Hmm.
definitely me.
So you heard it here first. Shem Phillips says that balance is overrated. Lens and Vale. Yeah, totally. So, so for you guys, what is driving the replay value of this game?
I think it's 100% what you were just talking about, Sam, about all these different micro decisions that you're making during the game that you could have made differently. And so when you finish the game, you're like, well, what would have happened if I had instead paid for that with cheese instead of going back to the beginning? Or what would have happened if I had unlocked my third rat really early and I walked up with all of them? Or what would happen if I just rushed up my first rat right to the top and then unlocked a second rat and then walked to those two guys up together? Like, there's just so many variations that you could do on all the stuff that's going on that that's exciting for me and trying something different next time. It's tactical at the same time. So next time I'm going to try something different, but I'm also just going to have to adapt to what's happening and what other people are doing. So it's not going to be like, oh yeah, I got the Apicore strategy, I did it, it's done. It'll be like, I tried my best to do the Apicore strategy. Some people got in my way. I'm sure I could do it better next time, like.
But even within Apple cores, there's the decision of what am I going to unlock? Am I going to unlock rats or am I going to get comics or am I just going to get points? So even the Apple core strategy has layers to it, right?
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
And even the building ship parts, we talked about how you collect those resources to build ship parts, but you can use those resources to go through the tunnels as well. So maybe like you could be collecting all these resources, but you could be using them to just run your rats up really quick instead of building a bunch of ship parts. So I don't know. There's just so many different ways that you could play. Even though the game's so simple, it feels like there's so much that you can explore within it.
Yeah, I think what would keep me coming back is largely the fact that it's a very fast game. Like, and it's a game that I could teach comfortably to most people, even to non-gamers. It's not that hard to understand. Like, what, 5 to 10 minute teach, and you can simplify it fairly easily too by hand picking certain comics that are easy to explain, things like that. So that's a real bonus. I think what for me as a player, what brings me back is probably more just the enjoyment of the puzzle more than anything. Because there could be a draw for discovery and trying to play different ways. And I think Sam, it's probably what draws you back in a lot.
Yeah.
But for me, and Zach actually mentioned it a while back earlier, is that you could sit down and go, all right, this game, I'm doing this thing. This is my plan. And then three other players do that thing on their first turn. You're like, well, that throws my whole hope for this game out the door. So it's like there is definitely lots of promise of discovery. But I think if you sit down hoping to try a certain thing, then you might be setting yourself up for disappointment. So you kind of have to sit down and just go into it and then discover a strategy in your first few turns rather than going, this turn I'm doing this. Because, like, yes, it might be fun. And yes, you can get to explore that strategy, which is cool. You get to discover how it feels to play that way. But you might not have a chance at winning, like if you're not actually reading the table. So it's that strange mix of tactics versus strategy that you can't just go in blindly. Like in some games, you can just like, I don't know, Feast for Odin, you can almost just go and, all right, this is what I'm doing this game. I'm doing this. And someone might get in your way a little bit, but you can mostly focus on the thing you're doing. Whereas in this game, it's far more swingy on reacting to what other players are doing. So, yes, the discovery is cool and there's lots of different ways to play, but don't go into the game hoping to try a certain thing and win. Like, go into it just to enjoy it and maybe you win.
Yeah. So for me, at the macro level, straight out, for me, it's a triumph of game design. A game that is so intuitive, such a simple rule set, flows really, really well. The turns are fast, and yet you can have many different strategies or approaches to the game. And at the macro level, there are lots of different ways you could feel powerful with different comics, with different your light bulb far around, or with different backpacks available to your energy drinks, or lots of rats on the field. There are lots of ways you can feel powerful, and they feel unique. They feel different from one another. So there is that discovery, there is that temptation to play the game and try a different path and see how that feels, which is great. And at the micro level, it's what you talk about, Zach. There are those turns that make you feel smart, that are satisfying when you pop it all off, do all that thing with that healthy dose of interaction in there. So for me, it's a slam dunk. Honestly, I think this game is really underrated looking at it on BGG. Like 7.5 is a good score. It's a solid score, but this game kind of wowed me for everything that it delivers. It's kind of designed for me, like experimenting with really extreme strategies, or anytime there's lots of ways to engine build. I'm not only interested in the extreme strategies, but also the combinations between the strategies. What if about 50 of this, 50 of this, you know? I think that's always really interesting. And I'm left thinking about the game, wanting to try it some more. So I think those are the things that drive replay value for me.
It does make me think a little bit that maybe why this game has not had the reception that you'd hope it would is really like it's the odd theme, the odd look of the game versus who it's targeting, right? Like this game is great for families, like it really is, and it does visually probably appeal to families, right? Like it's these big, colorful oval spaces on the board, which to a designer's eye are like horrible to look at, but it's bright and obvious, like it's very easy to read. But I was saying to you guys earlier, I was trying to find a good photo of the game on the table, and I couldn't really find a photo that like maybe, oh yeah, that's the game. Like it didn't really grab me because it's mostly just a big board with lots of pieces around it and lots of colors everywhere. So in a weird way, it's like what they've done visually is perfect for a family game. It really is. But I mean, rats are kind of an odd theme for families, which families love rats, maybe Ratatouille. But for you, Sam, as like a gamer, like this game has a lot of oomph for you because of what it gives you. But I guess the look of the game probably doesn't appeal to most people that are in your camp. Like it's not beige enough, right? It doesn't really,
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's
draw
true.
you in with those beige
Yeah.
colors. So it's in a strange space. And I applaud them for trying something different because you don't want every game to look the same. But I wonder if how much we do a lot. And our games have probably had the same problem where it's like, which camp are you in? Like, is it light and approachable or is it a gamer's game? And sometimes you can try and cross over between those and it's quite hard to really pull it off. So I think overall, like it's good, but I think there are some like visual things here that probably put people off. I mean, I'm probably not going to pick up a game about rats personally. Like for whatever reason, I was like a game about rats. No, thank you. I don't want to play a rat game. So there's things like that. So maybe it is just a gem for some people that they've missed because the visuals have turned them off. So if you hate rats, but you want a quick teaching game that has lots of opportunities for discovery and engine building, maybe this is the game.
I hope you've enjoyed our discussion about First Rat, but we'd love to hear from you. Jump on the Garphill Games Discord and let us know in the podcast channel if you've played it and what you thought. What is your favourite game that is fast and easy to teach but with lots to explore? What do you think about interaction deciding the winner in 3 or more player games? Welcome back to our BGG Top 200 draft. This time we're looking at games 121 to 130. And as always, these are probably not the games that are in that category right now because we screenshotted when we started this, and I'm going to read out the names now. So from 121, The Quest for El Dorado, Architects of the West Kingdom, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, Keyflower, Ra, Nemesis Lockdown, Tigris and Euphrates, Raiders of the North Sea, Dominion Intrigue, and Kalis. So this week, Shem will be banning first, and Sam will be first picking. So let's take it away.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, I don't want to ban any of our own games. We've got Architects and Raiders on there. So, but if no one picks Raiders, I might cry. So it's a tough one. Maybe I ban it so that I save myself from the hurt.
You can pick it. How is
No,
there hurt if you get to pick it?
That might be weird if I pick my own game. I've already picked Nemesis. I think it's in like the 30 to 40 range, maybe. So I'm going to ban Nemesis Lockdown. I actually own this game, but I don't know if you guys would choose anyway. But I've already chosen a Nemesis game, so I will ban the other one.
I'm in absolute agony now. I kind of want third pick just to get whatever's.
I thought it was 124 all day, Sam.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I'm going to go with a game that I'm a champion of that none of my friends like anywhere near as much as I do. It's got a genius worker placement plus color plus worker bidding mechanism, and it's Keyflower. It's such a cool Euro design that I think deserves to be this high or even higher in BGG. Such a clever combination of mechanisms that work really well. The presentation and some of the ways that you score points perhaps are the only thing that feels dated on this game. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. There are a lot of other games that I like, of course, on this list, but I'm happy for one of you guys to pick them up, and I better support the one that I know no one else would pick. So I'm going to take Keyflower, and I'm very happy with that.
Well, you're putting Shem in a tough position, right? Because if he picks a Garphill game, he's going to have to pick a game he designed. You could have picked Raiders, and then he wouldn't have had to make that decision. Because I'm going to be picking Architects of the West Kingdom because it is one of my absolute favorite games, and it really was playtesting this game with Sam and Shem was really an introduction into the hobby and the kind of development side of things as well, and it was very exciting. And I've played it so many times, introduced it to so many people, taught it to all sorts of people, and they've loved it. So I can't leave it on this list and ignore it. So Architects of the West Kingdom is my pick.
I got to respond to that because Raiders is 100% in my Hall of Fame. But that's spoiling a thing that I want to do. I want to do a top 10 most significant games at some point. Maybe we do it at the end of the year. Maybe it's a fun thing. But Raiders is 100% in my Hall of Fame. So, I'm not sleeping on that game. It's fantastic. Anyway.
Why is Shem crying with joy right now? What's going on? All right, so, yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit torn here, actually. I think I know what I'm going to pick, though. I was going to pick the Quest for El Dorado because it's a banger of a game.
Yeah.
But then I stepped back for a second and thought, of all these games, which one would I rather play right now of all of them? And I'm arrogantly going to say Raiders. So I'm picking my own game. How about that? Do you like that?
Yeah.
Well,
Shem,
you actually like the games you designed? What?
I know.
How could you do that? How could you like your own games?
Just this one.
Who would have known?
That's the funniest thing, though. Like, when Game Group comes around and they suggest a Garphill game, they're, you probably wouldn't want to play this, would you, Sam? And I'm like, dude, like, I design games I want to play. So I'm always going to say yes. Like, I don't think that's arrogant. I think that's what a designer should do. They should design games they like. That's so genuine. Honestly,
like almost every time I go to Bobby's house, he'll have like a birthday day, like once a year, or he might do some other kind of gaming day. Pretty much every single time I go to those things, I'll be playing a game with someone, then look to their table and they're playing one of my games. I'm like, oh, thanks for the invite. Like, I would have loved to have played that game. But yeah, cool. Enjoy playing Raiders without me. But yeah.
100%.
Yeah, there we go. Raiders.
It's a great pick.
I read a interview with one of the Brunos. I can't remember which one it was because I don't know, for some reason.
They're the same person in your mind.
Can't. One of the Brunos. They've melded in my mind. But he was essentially saying, he's like, I don't have time in my life to play a game. I design games that I like to play, and I don't have time in my life with family and everything that's going on to play other people's games. So I just play my own games and play test my games, and I enjoy it. And I was like, yeah, that's fair enough. Like, if I think what most designers try and do is make games that they'd want to play, and if you've only got time to do that because they're the games you're making and you enjoy playing them, why not? Obviously, like, I think playing other people's games is great because you discover new things that you wouldn't have thought about and can just like widen your horizons. But like, if you're happy just playing your own games for the rest of your life, you might just be happy doing that.
So do we need to talk about the elephant in the room, that Paladins of the West Kingdom was undrafted? Rip.
What are you talking about, man? That never happened.
Yeah. We just didn't even mention it. People can interpret that how they will.
Some of us may have thought that Zach would take it, but he didn't. So anyway.
Oh, sorry, guys. Sorry.
Yeah.
What did I take that week? I don't even remember.
No idea. Something trash. Something that's not as good as Paladins, probably.
Probably. Thanks for listening to the Lens and Veil podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Garphill Games.
You can follow Garphill Games on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, X, and YouTube by subscribing to our newsletter at garphill.com or by joining the Garphill Discord server.
I just described my two kids what an omelette was the other day. Like halfway between scrambled eggs and a pancake.
Yeah,
That's my description.
that's a pretty good way to describe it, to be honest. Never would have thought it.
And worse than both.
Yeah.
I've never tried to make one. I did have one like in the hotel that I was staying in Singapore because they'd like make them freshly in the kitchen at breakfast. So I'll get one. It's okay.
I went through a batch of making them for myself in the morning.
Mhm.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Takes about 5 minutes.
I think just egg and cheese for me, and I've lost all the Americans here, but egg and cheese is a bad combo. I don't reckon it works.
It's good. It's
So-
good. Yellow and yellow.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something like kind of richness to it. Nah. not
Do you
for me.
like carbonara?
It's a bit sickly. It's nice, but it's sickly. Like you wouldn't want it that often.
I do share that. Like it is quite rich.
That's kind of my point. The egg and cheese thing is
Yeah.
very sickly.
Put some chicken on it.
Yeah.
Chicken and cheese.
It's got essentially bacon in it, so it's not. But it's guanciale, so it's from the cheek of the pig.
Like what we would call fettuccine. I know that's just a type of pasta, right? But would
Yeah.
be similar, where you'd have chicken and bacon and mushroom and then cream and maybe some egg yolk, or what is it? Just
Yeah.
egg mixed
Carbonara.
in. No, like fettuccine. Similar.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever
Thick
eaten
noodles.
that. It's not Italian. It's like American Italian, I think.
Yeah, but you'd like it.
Maybe. Yeah, probably. I remember my dad saying that his favorite Italian dish was chicken fettuccine. I'm like, told my wife, and she's like, what's that?
Is there a stigma against chicken and pasta as well?
Yes,
pizza?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
These
Yeah,
guys
there's-
just don't understand how versatile chicken is. Like it's just OP. They just don't understand.
But it's the same thing that you're talking about before. Chicken and pasta is white on white. Like, I don't know, man. Can you do that? It's like having pasta and bread, man. Because it's all about the color, not about anything else, right?
Sure.
Racist.
I mean, your daughter, she just has pasta bianco, so that's just white and white.
Yep,
I
that's
mean,
true.
Yeah.
It's white and white on white. It's like either butter or oil with cheese with pasta. Anyway, shall we start? Okay.
Speaking of cheese,
Yeah, I should have done a food one after all this talk about food.